never believed in the paranormal or anything supernatural. I always thought those things were just stories people told to scare others. But after what happened to me during a late-night road trip, I can't help but question everything I once believed. This is a real story, one that has haunted me for years. It changed my perspective on life, and I hope no one else ever has to experience what I did. This isn't a tale of exaggeration or imagination. It's the truth. It started as a spontaneous decision, just a simple road trip to get away from the daily grind. I was feeling restless, and the idea of driving through the night sounded liberating. The clock read 10:30 p.m. as I pulled out of my driveway, my car loaded with nothing more than a few essentials. The plan was to take a route I wasn't too familiar with, one that promised to be scenic but would also help me avoid the busier highways. I didn't tell anyone I was going. It wasn't like I had a destination anyway. I just wanted to drive. The deeper I got into unfamiliar territory, the more isolated the road seemed. I passed a few small towns that were completely silent, and before long, I was alone on a narrow highway surrounded by dense trees. The sound of the engine and the tires on the asphalt was all I could hear. I felt a slight unease, but I brushed it off. After all, I was used to late-night drives. But this one felt different. The woods on either side seemed to close in around me as I continued onward, swallowed by darkness. Around midnight, I saw headlights up ahead. At first, I was relieved. I hadn't seen another car for what felt like hours, and the sight of another vehicle was oddly comforting. But as I got closer, I noticed something strange. The car ahead was driving incredibly slowly. In fact, it was barely moving. I kept my distance, figuring maybe the driver had car trouble. But the further I followed, the more I started to feel something wasn't right. The car wasn't maintaining a steady pace. It seemed to swerve slightly, as if the driver was struggling to keep it on the road. I debated whether to pass or not. But every time I tried to gain ground, the car would speed up, just enough to keep me behind it. I had been driving for hours, and this stretch of road was becoming more desolate by the minute. The car seemed like my only connection to the outside world, but the more I tried to follow, the more I felt a strange pressure in my chest. I was now nearly an hour into this strange, slow chase. The other car hadn't once signaled or done anything to suggest it was an ordinary driver. I found myself growing increasingly uncomfortable, especially when the car took an unexpected left turn onto an unmarked gravel path. At this point, my curiosity got the best of me. I decided to follow. The road was rough, more like a trail than an actual street, and my car bounced over rocks and uneven terrain. I tried to maintain some distance but kept the headlights focused on the other car. It was too dark to see much beyond the faint glow in the distance, but something about the whole situation felt off. The car slowed again, almost to a crawl. I caught up to it, but as I reached the spot where it should have been, it was gone. No tires, no headlights, just an empty, narrow path leading into thick woods. I stepped out of my car, feeling both confused and alarmed. The trees surrounding me were dense, and the only sound was the wind rustling through the leaves. I checked my phone, hoping for a signal to call someone, but there was nothing. It was as if the car had vanished into thin air. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The road I had been following had suddenly become too quiet, unnaturally so. No birds, no insects, just an oppressive silence. A strange chill washed over me as the adrenaline started to kick in. I wasn't alone here. Then, I heard it. A soft rustling sound in the distance, footsteps, slow and deliberate. Someone, or something, was moving toward me. I ran back to my car, panic taking hold of me. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the keys, locking the doors as quickly as I could. The footsteps grew louder, closer, but I couldn't bring myself to look out the window. My eyes were fixed on the rearview mirror, expecting to see something, anything. The sound of the footsteps stopped abruptly. My heart raced, and I held my breath, waiting for what felt like hours. Finally, I started the engine, my hands shaking as I sped away from the gravel path, not daring to look back. For a few minutes, the road was eerily quiet again. But then I saw the headlights in my rearview mirror. The same car. It was following me. I didn't dare look behind me for too long, but the headlights grew brighter and closer as I pushed my car faster down the road. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted. Every time I checked the rearview mirror, the car was closer. And each time I sped up, it matched my pace. There was no way anyone should be able to keep up with me at this hour, on this deserted road. I floored the accelerator, my car speeding into the night. But still, the car followed. The closer it got, the more I realized there was no driver. I don't know why, but at some point, I had to know the truth. I forced myself to glance into the rearview mirror once more, and that's when I saw it. The car's headlights were blindingly close, and for a split second, I could see the shape of the vehicle more clearly. But there was no one in the driver's seat. I slammed on the brakes. The car behind me reacted just as quickly, stopping inches from my bumper. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront this, or should I just keep driving? I chose the latter. I sped off again, but the car stayed right on my tail, as if it knew exactly what I was doing. It was as if the car was alive, and it wanted me to see it. As I reached the outskirts of a nearby town, I turned onto a familiar road, hoping to lose the vehicle that had been tailing me. But before I could get far, I saw something else in the distance, shapes moving in the trees. I wasn't alone. Figures, dressed in dark clothing, stood among the trees, watching me. They didn't move. They just stared. As I drove through the narrow streets of the small town, I thought I had escaped the nightmare. But when I pulled into a gas station, the same car pulled in behind me, blocking my exit. This time, I didn't even need to look. The absence of a driver, the oppressive silence, the figures in the woods, it all made sense. I couldn't take it anymore. I sprinted into the station, my heart hammering in my chest. The attendant behind the counter looked up at me in confusion as I burst through the door. "There's a car outside," I stammered. "There's no one in it, but it's following me." The attendant went pale. "That's impossible," he whispered. "No one comes down this road anymore. It's been closed off for years. No one is supposed to be here." I never spoke of that night again. And to this day, I avoid that stretch of highway at all costs. But I know what I saw, what I felt, and what chased me down that lonely road. There is something out there, something that follows the lost souls who dare drive through the night. I don't know who or what it is, but it's not just a ghost. It's something far darker. And it's still out there, waiting.